Welcome to the Ben Franklin Fellowship's JUNTO Podcast. I'm BFF Chairman Phil Linderman. Today I'm very pleased to welcome one of our newest Ben Franklin Fellows, Nick Adams. Nick serves as the Special Presidential Envoy for American Tourism, Exceptionalism, and Values. Nick is an internationally recognized author, educator, policy analyst, and commentator who has dedicated his career to promoting American exceptionalism, civic education, free speech, and the American dream. Originally from Australia and now a proud American citizen, Nick brings a unique perspective on what makes the United States exceptional and why its founding principles continue to inspire people around the world. And Nick, I'm very happy to have you here. I appreciate all that you have done for the Ben Franklin Fellowship, and welcome.
Mr. Chairman, Phil Linderman, it is an honor, a pleasure, and a privilege to join you and all of your listeners. I've been looking forward to this now for a couple of months since you first reached out. You've been very gracious, you've been very hospitable, very generous with your advice, with your counsel, and I'm delighted to be a fellow of the Ben Franklin Fellowship, and it's a real honor to be here with you today.
Well, you're already a master diplomat. So everyone, I think, will be very interested to learn about you, Nick, and your personal career, your story, and I hope to get into that. But I'd like to begin by asking, how did you get into this position as a Special Presidential Envoy?
Well, Phil, look, I have had a relationship with President Trump since day one, the 16th of June, 2015, when he came down the escalator with his beautiful wife, Melania. I supported him from then. I was always on television singing his praises, and the president one day saw me on television and rather enjoyed what I had to say. And that was the beginning of what has been a very long and beautiful relationship. The president appointed me to the board of the Smithsonian, the Wilson Center, in 2020 in his first term. It was a 6-year term. Technically, I'm actually still on there right now. So that's kind of how it all began. And then obviously I never left the president's side, even between his first and second terms. In fact, our relationship only became closer and intensified during that period. And I was very honored, and I'm very happy to be able to say that I played a great role in the president's amazing political comeback.
Yeah. And
so throughout 2024, whenever I would see the president, he would say to me, "Nick, when we win, what do you want to do?" And I would always say, "Mr. President, the only title that I need is Friend of the President of the United States." And he would kind of accept that for a little while, but when he actually became president again as the 47th president, Phil, he said to me, "You don't want to join the greatest administration in the history of the country." And I said, "Mr. President, I would be, I'll take whatever you give me." And so the president nominated me in July of 2025 to be ambassador to Malaysia. Uh-huh. And I was waiting very patiently for my hearing. I filled out all my paperwork, and of course a lot of your listeners and fellows know exactly how that process is. We had the longest government shutdown in history back in October of last year.
Yes.
So while I was waiting for all of this to happen, one day I got a phone call from the White House, and they said, "The president's going to give you a massive promotion. He wants you to run tourism. You're going to effectively be the first minister for tourism that the United States of America has ever had. And you're going to be housed under the State Department, but you are the White House envoy, and you are going to have a lot of fun." And in fact, Phil, all around this town, all around Washington, my nickname is Ambassador of Fun. So,
Ambassador of Fun, that's what we're going to have to entitle this podcast.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm really, God works in mysterious ways.
Well, that's a great story. So then you go into this new role with, instead of Malaysia, the world is your oyster, as they say. And how do you approach your job? Because it's not easy. Even when the President of the United States says, I'm sending you on a special mission, go to the State Department, when you land in the State Department bureaucracy, you land in a challenging environment. So how do you approach your job? You've been doing it now for a number of months, right?
Yes, that's right. Yes, for the last 5 months, I've been in this particular role. Phil, look, I mean, this is the first time that I've actually worked for the government, and it's the first time that I've had to encounter the very significant bureaucracy that exists in any government agency. The thing with tourism is that it touches so many different agencies and departments. So obviously the White House runs everything. The White House guides and steers everything. But then, of course, you've got the Department of Homeland Security, because that's where Customs and Border Patrol are. That's where TSA is. Then you have the Department of Transportation, got our airports and our ports and roads and things like that. Then on top of that, you've got the Department of Commerce, which is really the engine of tourism, because inside the Department of Commerce, there is the National Travel and Tourism Office, the NTTO.
It's interesting that was put in Commerce and not in State Department, right?
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, I think it's probably a more natural home for commerce.
Okay.
But they've been around for a very long time, and they do all the research, they do all the data, they do all the statistical analysis, the policies, all that kind of thing. So so that's the Department of Commerce. Then, of course, at the Department of State, probably has the least amount to do with tourism. Visas and stuff like that obviously come under the purview of the State Department. So, but of course, no one has the platform of the State Department, which is probably why I was housed within the State Department, because the megaphone that the State Department has is unrivaled.
Well, it makes sense with the network of embassies and consulates around the world, for sure.
Yeah. So my role, Phil, is all about coordinating and overseeing all of these different, there's probably around about 120 employees throughout the administration that work on tourism across all the different agencies. So, I coordinate, I stay in touch. All of these guys are my partners. So while I'm in the State Department, really, I mean, I spend a lot of time over at the Department of Commerce. I spend a lot of time over at DHS. Because, for example, the White House FIFA task force was really housed under DHS.
Interesting.
Even though it was a White House entity. So because they do all the terrorism stuff and they do all the national security stuff. So,
and then you're abroad, I would imagine, on the road, traveling internationally, many weeks and all the time, right? Absolutely.
I mean, if I could, and I would be, the amount of invitations I get, Phil, I'd be in a different country almost every day. The amount of keynote conferences that I'm offered, the opportunities to go and further explore. But I should say that, tourism is one part of my role. The other parts are essentially being the brand ambassador for the United States. So American values and American exceptionalism and things like that. So there's also the need to really step up and defend America, because America is mercilessly and unceasingly attacked by people that are envious of its power, jealous of its influence, and no one really has ever gone out and made the case. There's never been a role that has been assigned to someone in an administration to go out there and push back against anti-Americanism.
Yeah, so what happens, for example, you go to Western Europe, and any of us know the hostility, particularly to the Trump administration right now in Germany and Britain and France, is very powerful in their media, in their elites, their opinion makers. You go into that cauldron, and you go to programs in the media, you do press interviews. How are you finding that engagement? Because I would imagine many of the interlocutors and the European media in particular would just dismiss you out of hand.
Well, Phil, look, it's interesting. I was very committed to doing a European media roadshow before the beginning of the World Cup. There was a small window beginning on the 1st of June. The World Cup, the first game was on the 12th. And there was a small window for me to go out and address what was very apparent. And that was that very significant parts of European country populations had been convinced that America was dangerous, that Americans were inhospitable, that Americans were unwelcoming, that America was very expensive, that if they came to the United States of America, the most likely outcome would be that they would have their phone confiscated, that their social media would be poured over, that they would be detained, and perhaps even sent back. They were the narratives going into the World Cup, and they were narratives that were pretty set by a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And the point that I made to everybody here in the administration was we need to go over there and dispel these myths. We need to go over there and give these people the reality. So from the 1st of June until the 6th of June, I was on every single top-tier media outlet in England, in Germany, in France, and in Ireland. And I had picked those particular markets on purpose. We didn't go to Italy because the Italians didn't make the World Cup. Either did the Irish, but we knew that there was some good media that we could get there. So from 4 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, I was on television, on radio, doing podcasts, every major print. We got Le Monde, Le Figaro in France, Die Welt in Germany, and I was basically just telling these presenters that were aghast. Number one, they couldn't believe that the admin was sending someone to robustly defend. And then when they found that I was so unapologetic about my representation of the reality of America, they were shocked, but they respected it. And it was really funny because in every interview, the interview would begin and it was, I won't say hostile, although it was certainly leaned that way, very much so, but they all began skeptical at minimum. And by the end of the interview, almost every single host or presenter would concede, well, you know, Nick, now that after we've spoken to you, we must say every trip we've had to America, personally, we've really enjoyed. Yeah. So we've never had any of these problems.
So, you know, a good lesson of showing up, being willing
Precisely.
to engage goes so far in terms of winning the battle, right?
Yes.
And we do have a good record. Now, to be sure, how did you balance the fact that the president has been outspoken, the administration, in that we need to secure our borders, that we are aware that many people have come to the country and abused their visa privileges and overstayed and so forth. There is a real story there, but that does not, and I would imagine this is part of your discussion, that does not negate the fact that when people receive visas, they honor the visas, they do what they are authorized to do, be a tourist or whatever. We are very welcoming countries. Is that how you balanced it?
Yeah, look, the point that I've always made, Phil, is that we can protect our borders while opening our doors at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And tourism is a really, really powerful tool of diplomacy, as you know, an incredible demonstration of soft power. Just yesterday, I was with Freddie, the viral sensation, and his brother and their friend. And they have an uncle, Freddie and his brother.
Tell us about who Freddie is, so some of our listeners may not know.
So Freddie basically was here for the entire World Cup, and young man, very early 20s, And he and his two travel companions from Germany, they basically started documenting their time in America. So they would go to their first ever Buc-ee's with 100 gas pumps.
Yeah.
Then they would go
That's always a real adventure for anybody, right, to go to Buc-ee's.
Then they went to a Bass Pro Shop or a Cabela's, and they went to a Mexican restaurant and experienced the glory of unlimited free chips and salsa. They saw drive-through banks. They tried all different types of American barbecue. All of these things that for us are very standard, very status quo. But these young men came over here and started documenting their experiences by video and posting it online. And very soon they gained hundreds of thousands of followers, millions.
Fascinating, yeah.
Because Americans were themselves so upset by all of the negative stuff that they could feel that the rest of the world thought about them. And then to have people from another country come and display affection for America in a really innocent and genuine way with no filter. Unfortunately, the mainstream media provides a filter for everything.
Sure.
But with social media, these guys are going direct to the American public. And the American public fell in love with Freddie and his two guests. But the point that I was going to make was that Freddie and his brother, they have an uncle who came and spent time in the 1980s, did an exchange in the United States. And to this day, and we're talking now 40 years on, this man apparently has a Michigan state flag in his backyard.
In Germany.
In Germany.
Yeah.
And he still has Americans that come and visit him from that time. He comes over here and visits the friends that he made. And this guy is the biggest American file you'll ever come across, all because he spent 6 months here 40 years ago. So these effects last decades, which is why I say that, tourism is a very underrated tool of diplomacy.
No, I mean, well, you're absolutely right. It's also a source of income, right?
Yes.
The industry,
massive.
I read somewhere, I think that France may be the most
correct.
The largest number of foreign visitors go to France.
But we are the United States of America is the largest tourism sector in the world.
I see. Okay.
We've got the biggest tourism industry.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about this German, and we have good friends in Germany, and we know a long, good relationship with the old Bundesrepublik that bind our two countries, I think, despite some political turmoil or disagreement. But the value piece, and I would note, you're not from the Midwest, as we talked about, and
Southwest, Midwest. Yes.
How does this come together for you as an presidential envoy about American values and reaching to people who come to our country out of or identify with our country out of a choice, right?
Sure.
Yeah. How does that come together in your eyes?
Look, and I think this is why the president chose this role for me, because Phil, once upon a time I was a tourist. And the reason that Freddie and his travel companions struck such a chord with me is that a lot of the things that they were documenting reminded me of the same kind of things that I was fascinated by 17 years ago in the summer of 2009 when I first came over here as a tourist. And I fell in love with the American people. I fell in love with the American culture. I love the optimism and the kindness and the generosity and all of those things. And it's very hard for Americans, just like anybody, when you are born somewhere, when you grow up somewhere, you believe that what you have is normal, that's not anything to celebrate, there's nothing special about it. But I can tell you that there are daily things that happen in America that happen nowhere else in the world. You're not going to get someone to pick up your tab at a restaurant because they like how you think or what you're doing, or they realize that you need some more money to stay on the road to achieve your dream. these are things that American people do. I mean, we are per capita 3 times more generous than Europeans in the United States in terms of what we give to charity and things like that. So
how did this fit with your background of coming from Australia? I mean, a country, it's a different country, but similar roots in a big, wide historical perspective and common language, sort of. And
yes. So look, the greatness of America really is its people. There's no question. What I have really enjoyed about the United States and the values that I love about America, it's about individualism, not collectivism.
Mm-hmm.
It's about patriotism, not relativism. It's about God, not government. It's about faith, not secularism. It's about equality of opportunity as opposed to equality of outcome. It's life, not death. It's about being bold, not being bland. It's about optimism, not pessimism.
Yeah.
These are the American values when America is at its finest.
I would agree 100%. But did you not find some of that in Australia?
I'm trying to be diplomatic here, Phil.
Yeah,
but there's a reason why I'm here.
Yeah, well, we're
leave it at
happy.
that.
We're happy you're here. Just as something that's curious to as an American born here, raised here, et cetera, to talk to immigrants. I've talked to many. I find from my own experience that your story about what brought you to this country is somewhat universal, and you'll find it from different backgrounds, different cultures. And
well, look, the way to look at it is this: all of those values that I just mentioned, I would give you the value, and then I'd give you the opposite. The only country in the world that has those values lined up like I just gave you is the United States. So I would, in Australia, in Europe, in other places, it's collectivism, not individualism. It's relativism, not patriotism. It's government, not God. It's secular, more so than it's faith-based. So America is the only country that chooses the opposite of the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And that's what I think makes America exceptional.
That's a great explanation, and it has to do with the actual values themselves. There's a famous quotation from President Obama back in his second administration. He says, the Americans think they're exceptional. The Greeks think they're exceptional.
The British.
They're all, But I think you just touched on why Obama was wrong. It is actually the values that are involved.
Without question. And look, I mean, I have done a lot of speaking in public schools, and the number one thing that I have always stressed to students about the US Constitution, which is the greatest political document in world history, is, and I ask this question when I first begin speaking, I say, is the United States of America the only country that has a constitution? Obviously, the answer to that is no. And then I say, so what makes the United States Constitution so special? And usually no one can answer that question. But here's the answer. The United States of America, the Constitution of the United States of America, lays out the powers of the individual and the limits of the government. Every single time any other country or government has passed a constitution for their own people, it has always done the opposite. It has laid out the powers of the government and the limits of the individual. And that's where American exceptionalism was birthed.
A great insight, and sometimes one that's needed even in the United States Senate, as one United States senator made remarks to the effect that our freedoms come from the government, and I wish you had been in that exchange. If they had been confirming you in your role right now, you're in an unconfirmed. You did not have to go, unlike the Malaysia ambassadorship nomination. this nomination is without Senate confirmation, correct? Yeah. So you didn't have to have that discussion with Senator Kaine about where do our values come from.
Yeah.
But it is, it's refreshing to always, as an American diplomat, I found to talk to people from other points of view who quickly come and identify with these American values that you've touched on, the Constitution, where the limits that restrict government, et cetera, the optimism, the whole set that I think is uniquely American, and probably then another talking point for you. You're talking about tourism, you're talking about values, and you're talking about exceptionalism, and they do come together in this way. How did you find that the use of the traditional legacy media, you were in Europe talking to the major dailies, but you're also very active in the whole new explosive world. You talk about Freddie.
Social media, online. What can American diplomats, what can American opinion makers learn? I mean, I'm a dinosaur from the old school. Tell us what we're missing with the great tool of going directly to the people online. Yeah, look, I mean, believe it or not, I mean, look, I have 3.5 million followers, Phil. Any outlet usually includes in their description of me a reference to me being a social media influencer. I certainly don't lead with that when I introduce myself to people. The internet is a sewer. Social media is a sewer. There's no question about that. It's a very ugly and dark place, and you just have to look at, again, with Freddie. I mean, he was getting so much hate, and his only crime was falling in love with America. Mm-hmm. But there was such intense hatred that was leveled at him that he got off X, he got off social media, and I spent 2 weeks convincing him to come back, and he did.
Interesting.
Finally.
Yeah.
But so just as an indication of how ugly it is. But having said that, particularly for young people, anyone under the age of 30, the way that you are going to shape opinions, the way that you're going to have the best opportunity to make an impact and influence people is through social media. And most importantly, in terms of diplomacy, it is the only, and President Trump has led the way with this ever since he entered the political scene, where he was able to give the unvarnished version of himself directly to the people. So when you do that, you don't let the media shape a narrative around who you are. I mean, they'll still try to do it, but when you get to talk directly to people, they know exactly what you're thinking. It's not being interpreted for them. There's not a flavor that's being added to it. There's no salt and pepper that's being sprinkled on it.
Yeah, there's disapproval that that the establishment media can do in so many subtle ways.
Exactly.
That is not available to them. But so you're now in the State Department sort of old school environment. Well, in some ways, State Department does try to be innovative, but in many other ways, it is hamstrung by repeating what it's done in the past, operationally, et cetera, and so forth. What are you finding? I mean, your 3.5 million followers, impressive. By the way, it's a tad more than we have here in the Junto podcast, but we're learning. What kind of reaction inside State Department, old school, are you finding? Are you just going around them in terms of getting your message out to your public?
Look, I mean, I think I am not your average government official. Okay, so I mean, I come to this with a big personality. I come with this as a well-known, prominent media commentator. I come to this as somebody with a very unique background. I mean, there's no one in the administration that has my background. It's extraordinarily unique. And so with that comes a lot of positives, and of course with that come some challenges. But overall, despite there being some challenges, and the other thing that you've got to factor in is this is the first time that this role has ever existed. So everybody is really in uncharted territory. So I have the benefit of being able to make this what I want it to be, which I think is really what the president wanted. However, that also means that there are going to be other people that may consider some of the stuff that I do to not be a priority, or perhaps there are other things that take priority over that. So or maybe I'm encroaching on someone's space because, again, this is a new role, and why is this in the State Department? Why is this not in the Department of Commerce? All that kind of stuff.
Well, it was to the credit of the president to see the innovation.
Oh, big time.
that you bring, and sending it over to Foggy Bottom was a bit of a small little revolution in messaging, right? Although, to their credit, I mean, Deputy Secretary Landau, very active in social media, right?
Yes.
Secretary of State Rubio, very active. As you go down the food chain in the organization, you will find inevitably more career people and more voices and more procedures that try to close off, a robust messaging. But you have done quite well because of your impressive record and experience. But I would say that you have a foot in the old world media, right? You were on many American broadcasts, Fox News, et cetera, and then you have developed simultaneously, or maybe in partnership, whatever, the social media following. But would you say that is the future? Even though you did have to go to Germany and talk to Die Welt and France, et cetera, but the future is online, or maybe not. What's your judgment on that?
You've got to show up everywhere, just like we established earlier in the podcast, Phil. But without question, the future has to be online. I mean, I think that's inevitable. I think that people like to select what they want to listen to. They don't want to be just given a list of fixed options and have to choose from that. So now they can listen to only the people that they agree with, or only the people that they like, or only the people they find attractive, or whatever it is that animates them to engage and watch something. So I definitely think that the future is online. It is social media, and it's going to become increasingly important for the State Department, for diplomats, for ambassadors, to use that platform to directly communicate the unvarnished version of what they want to communicate.
Yeah, one of your legacies in State Department may very well be the taking to the next step these tools and strategies and using them as we try to improve our messaging to the world, which is always a challenge.
Yes.
But as you step back, you've had a big success in terms of having been a big part in promoting tourism in the context of the World Cup, which I think even the critics must concede, even the critics in Europe, that the Americans did a pretty good job in hosting the Cup. And that's a feather in your hat. Do you have any preliminary data on what that has done to tourism, travel, the Cup games?
Look, nothing. Obviously, the World Cup only finished 2.5 days ago, but I can tell you that certainly in the lead up to the World Cup, not the lead up to the World Cup, but a couple of weeks away from the final of the World Cup, we were on track for this to be the biggest July for tourism ever.
Fantastic.
Fantastic. We'll have to see if the numbers bear that out, but that was certainly the projection if we kept going and met certain thresholds.
That will be impressive. It'll also have a bottom line in the amount of dollars that come back to the United States, as you well know.
Well, it's already been the most successful financially World Cup ever.
Yeah. So what happens next? What's on your horizon as you've had the first handful of months of big success, and what's coming around the corner?
Well, Phil, look, I mean, I am trying. So the three parts of my role under the tourism, one is to attract as many international visitors as possible. And I've set a national goal of attracting, on average, 100 million international visitors per year by 2030.
100 million. Wow.
100 million. So last year we were at 70. So there's a lot to go, but I'm a big thinker and I'm a big dreamer, and I think that we should always set our goals high. Not to mention that we have established a generational run here. I mean, the World Cup, America 250, the Olympics, the Women's FIFA World Cup, the Men's Rugby World Cup is coming up, the Women's Rugby World Cup is coming up. So we have all of these major sporting events that we can really kind of jump onto and increase our tourism. So, but number one is attracting international visitors. Number two is making sure that domestic tourism remains as robust as possible. Mm-hmm. And number three is bringing investment into America. So I would love to bring, and I'm actually working on it right now, but one of the only offerings that we don't have for tourists right now in the United States is a luxury sleeper train like they exist in Europe. And you could just imagine how good a luxury sleeper train would be in the United States. Could you imagine waking up and there are the Rocky Mountains right outside your window? And we have the infrastructure for it, and there is interest from overseas to bring those Orient Express type trains over to America. And I think that's an example of the kind of thing I'm trying to do.
That's a great insight. I mean, train travel, as you know, in the United States is challenged by economic considerations, state support, et cetera.
Correct.
But I like the original thinking because it's a beautiful country, and being able to see it on a big, long train trip, which does happen. I believe Amtrak does run a couple of trains, right?
Not only that, I mean, we invented it. Yeah, it used to be from Chicago to Hollywood to LA. Yeah, I mean, that was all the famous movie stars back in the day did it, and then, it just, things didn't keep that way. And now the Europeans have mastered it. And not just the Europeans, now they've expanded, these different train operators have expanded to Nepal and
China. China going very.
So I think that we can definitely hop onto that. But I'm also talking to airlines about adding routes. I'm talking to cruise lines, to home port ships. I'm talking to airports to add terminals because if we're going to sustain and achieve this big goal that I have of 100 million visitors on average every year, we need to make sure that we also keep up with all of that other stuff. So I want hotels breaking ground. This is good. We're making money. We're bringing people. And we know that when people come, Phil, they're going to love it.
Right. Well, we do believe in the Ben Franklin Fellowship very much, and peace and commerce and security, and you can have them together if you just do it. You do it the right way. As we get ready to wrap up, I'm curious to ask you, Nick, about do you have any observations on what professional sports in the United States, more traditional American sports, NFL, football, Major League Baseball, they make forays into the world, right? They're in China. The NFL goes to Europe now regularly. They go to Mexico, et cetera. Now, largely, they're trying to expand their brand abroad, but inevitably, it seems to me, I mean, my simple mind, that would also be bringing, reawakening new interest in those sports inside the United States, right? I know the people in Major League Baseball are just foaming at the mouth to see baseball as a sport go from Taiwan, where it's been for years and very active, Japan, South Korea, into China. So is any of that crisscrossed into your thinking or strategies? What's your observation on that?
Yeah, look, sports are there is nothing better than sports when it comes to uniting people, when it comes to bringing people to experience different cultures and different. We've seen a great example of that now with the World Cup. So I think it's great that we're exposing our Major League Baseball and the NFL and all of that stuff to the rest of the world, and I think that that's only going to continue. Look, we've got the best stadiums. We have got the best training facilities in the world, and these are attractions in and of themselves. Mm-hmm. And the point that I've been making, Phil, to everybody is that the American people themselves are the tourist attraction. Mm-hmm. I mean, you might go to China and as a tourist, and you might be really impressed that you can buy a train ticket with a retinal scan. And if that's, what cranks your tractor, well, that's great. But to me, there is no comparison to filling up your car at Buc-ee's and seeing a guy with a cowboy hat and a lifted truck leaning back, drinking a Coors Light,
a Coors, yes,
and talking to you about your trip. You're not going to get that in China.
You're not going to get that in China, no. That's for sure. There is a uniqueness in the American spirit that is somewhat universal and beyond our borders, and you have identified it. I want to thank you for taking the time, Nick. You're a very busy U.S. diplomat. To come in here and talk with us. I want to thank you for being part of the Ben Franklin Fellowship. We'd like to invite you back in a year, whenever, talk again about the successes. You've got a big feather in your hat, World Cup. Congratulations. Thank you for coming to be with us today.
Thank you, Phil. It's been a pleasure.
Okay. We'll see our guests next time on the JUNTO Podcast.